let's move ahead to Rule 14, because this is, without Rule 14, Rule 13 gets us in trouble. That's where leaders get into trouble a lot of times. Okay, Rule 14.
I started to walk down the hall, and I walked behind him. I said, but could you give me a little bit of guidance? What should I do about the recruiting program, and what should I do about the enlistment program? What should I do about the re-enlistment program? What should I do about the promotion program? And what should I do about the Women in the Army study? And what should I do about the Equal Opportunity study? And what should I do about human relations? And he turned around to me and he said, Rule 14. I said, yes, sir. And he said, Schwarzkopf, do what's right. Do what's right. Notice he didn't say, do what you think the Chief of Staff of the Army wants you to do. He certainly didn't say, do what you think I'd want you to do. He very definitely did not say, do what makes you look good. No. He said, do what's right. You see, now we've come full circle right back to this character business again. Because you know what? When the truly tough decisions have to be made, we normally know right here what the right thing to do is. The tough part is doing it. And especially when no one's there. When no one's there to grade your paper. When no one's there to say, he really knew what the right thing to do was, but he went ahead and did the wrong thing anyhow. When you can get away with doing the wrong thing. That's when this thing called character becomes so important. Rule 14, do what's right.
Do what's right. I mean, this is such a great introduction to leadership by Norman Schwarzkopf. You could almost just stop here and say, live with those two rules and you're going to be okay. And I don't have drinks to offer you. I don't have coffee to offer you. He just hit it right there. Do what is right. Now, if you think about yourselves in the position that you're in right now, whether that's whatever it is, whether it's Liz, whether it's Zach, if you're going to have a new boss, how do you want that boss to come in, that new leader to come in and address you initially, that first sit down to talk about business? Do you want that boss to have all the answers? I mean, that would certainly be taking charge, right? Or would you like that boss to listen to you about what your job is? I think the answer is obvious. But that's where people get in problem, particularly young leaders. Well, I'm the leader. I'm the young second lieutenant. I've got to come in and go, we're going to change things now. Why? Because I'm the leader and I get to show you I can change things. It's the worst thing any new leader can do. Do what's right in that setting is to say, let's sit and talk about what we've got here. Educate me. I'm the new guy. We're going to make this work together, but you got to give me what you have. And that's what's right. And it comes in a couple of areas, and there's a real challenge to this, and Schwarzkopf covered it towards the end, is that you know what's right because you feel it right here. I had a peer, I won't go into the story, but she phrased this one time. She was a former Army officer, and she said, you know, there's the hard right and there's the easy wrong. And that's what you need to decide. And I can tell you how you can decide when you're faced with a decision. Frequently, if you got two options, one of them is going to be the right thing to do and one of them isn't. How do you tell the difference? Every ounce of your being on one half of you says, it would be really easy if I went this way. Usually, the right thing to do is rarely easy. The wrong thing to do is frequently easy. Give me an example. Addressing the subpar performance of one of the people you're leading. You've got an individual that's just not doing it well enough, not good enough, and the result is that behavior of that individual, it's not messing you up that much. You can correct it. There are ways you can work around it. You know, I don't need to do the hard thing and address this with this guy because then he's going to get mad at me. So I can work around it. I'll correct the errors for him. You're not doing him any favors. That's the easy wrong. The hard right is to sit him down because we all want to be liked, right? The hard part is to say, we need to talk for a little bit. Bring him in, shut the door, and address what needs to be fixed. Now, there's a method to do that, and we address that in Blue Lobster Leadership so that you're not just beating the guy up. I don't even call it negative feedback. I call it constructive adjustment. But our job as leaders is twofold. Most of the time, we're just doing our job. We're just doing what we do on a daily basis. The other half of our job, though, is to develop the people that we work with. That's what we're here for. Leaders don't recruit followers, they develop other leaders. And you can't develop a leader unless you can take some of the challenges or get that individual not looked at as well as they could be on evaluations and help them make it better. But it's hard sometimes to bring that person in and say, you know, you're doing a great job with your sales quota, but I got a problem with this administrative task. That's not what you're here to do. But if you don't fix it, it's going to harm your future. That's hard to do. It would be very easy to just let it pass. Let the next guy worry about it. I'm retiring in a year. I'm moving on. I'm getting promoted. I'm going to let the next manager come in here and deal with this. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to develop people. And it comes down, as we wrap this up, an example of a hard right, easy wrong.
Up first tonight, 2 volunteer firefighters suspended after rushing a child to the hospital and likely saving her life. The problem, though, they broke policy. Fox 5's Alexandra Limon with the story.
I spoke to one of the 2 firefighters who is now suspended after driving an 18-month-old little girl to the hospital in their fire engine. He said he felt it was a matter of life or death, and that's why they chose to drive the baby to the hospital instead of waiting for an ambulance. Now the 2 men are suspended. It all happened last Saturday. The child's father says his daughter was having a seizure. He pulled into a McDonald's and called 911. He says waiting for help felt like an eternity. But then the 2 volunteer firefighters with the Falmouth Fire Department arrived.
When I exited the fire truck, I was the officer in charge. I exited the fire truck. The gentleman handed me his child. At that point, she was completely limp and flaccid. I turned around, I looked at my driver without any hesitation, and I said, turn around, we're going to the hospital.
Captain Kelly and the child's father both say the little girl is okay, and they believe it was thanks to the firefighters' quick actions. The child's father released a statement that says, in part, my wife and I feel terrible for the fallout that has happened to these 2 gentlemen. They simply had the best interests for our daughter's care in mind. We're extremely thankful they made the decisions they did and that our daughter is back home with us doing well. The actions of these men represent a dedication to their mission and a deep concern of doing what is best for the people they are serving. In our eyes, they are heroes.
When we found her, she was completely cyanotic blue from the chest line up. So basically that just means she doesn't have oxygen to the upper part of her body.
That's why the firefighters felt they could not wait. The other issue was they couldn't get an exact time for when the ambulance would arrive.
Ambulance 7, you're going to 545 Ferry Road at the McDonald's.
The chief at the Falmouth Fire Station says being down 2 volunteer firefighters makes it harder for the station to respond to calls.
I support them 100%. If I was in the same position, I would have done the exact same thing. We understand policy, we understand protocol, we understand standard operating guidelines, but they are just that. They're a guideline. They don't cover everything.
Think about that yourself. And I think if I were to put you in the position of the firefighters, I'm pretty certain I know what your decision would be. That's a pretty simple one. The question is the leader of the 2 firefighters. He is now faced with 2 firefighters that violated established procedure. They saved a life, but they violated that procedure. He's faced with a hard right, easy wrong decision. The hard right might be to go up against senior people and fight the suspension. The easy wrong would be just to float and let it go. You'll just be suspended for a couple of days. The question is, what do you do as a leader? Do you back those people up and probably irritate your boss quite a bit in fighting an exception to this policy? Or do you just let it ride? Hard right, easy wrong. And if you find it hard, if these decisions are hard, keep in mind that as a leader, your job is not to make everybody happy. If you want to make everybody happy, give them ice cream. If you want to be a leader, sometimes you've got to do the hard right. And that hard right might be bringing that guy in that's just not performing to expectations and helping them develop so that they can either meet expectations or maybe find a different course of action. That wraps up the first piling. Rule 13 and Rule 14. When placed in command, take charge, do what's right. If you don't have them ingrained in your brain, don't think about stepping into leadership because it's not going to work out well.